Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kaylee Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur podcast. And I am joined today by the fabulous Amanda Hutchinson, who is a branding photographer. And we are going to be diving into the power of branding photography for your business. Amanda, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really excited to dive into this topic. I feel like this is something as well that I've never brought to the podcast at all, but it's something that's so important when it comes to your vision and how people represent themselves as a brand, whether it's a personal brand or an actual brand. But before we dive into branding photography, I would love to know a little bit more about you and your journey. Are you happy to share with our listeners a little bit more about how you got to where you are today?
Yes, and it's not an obvious route into it. So I did psychology and disaster management at uni and ended up working for a local authority the week a massive child protection case hit the news, and I left 6 months after Tottenham riots, and I was on call 1 week on, 1 week off for that whole period. So photography was very much my creative outlet to what was a very doom and gloom job of constantly thinking, what's the worst that could happen? Right, let's put a plan in place for it. And then when we got married, didn't love the photos and sort of thought I might have been able to do a better job myself if my camera had been strapped to my chest. We got some great candids, but the portraits of me and Hutch, I hate them with an absolute passion. So I got into wedding photography that way, and I learned a lot through my own business, through my own wedding into my business, that is. Yes. But what I realized I was doing, and this was 11 years ago, I was taking photos of the suppliers while they were setting up the wedding and sending them the photos and going, hey, look, here's some pictures of you in action. And it wasn't really what people were doing in the UK. So brand photography was massive in the States, but it hadn't really trickled its way over to the UK. And so I sort of fell into telling the stories of the suppliers at the weddings, and then that kind of spread out into other online businesses who were maybe sharing their client wins, or they were sharing their things that they were making, but they weren't ever showing their face. And so how are they going to build this know, like, and trust? And at this point, I was then working in corporate and doing a lot of brand reputational management around crises. And I thought, well, smaller businesses need to be doing this. They need to be thinking about their brand and their reputation and building that know, like, and trust. And you know, that wasn't happening. So I think I got into it at a really easy point because not really anybody was doing it. And so it's kind of snowballed that way. And then in 2019, after a disagreement of priorities with my boss, I quit and just went, I'm done. And I became a full-time photographer 6 months before the pandemic hit. Not an ideal time to go fully self-employed as a wedding and brand photographer. But here I am, still fighting, still going. So
love this. Thank you so much for sharing that. And oh my goodness, just what an interesting and incredible way as well to obviously get into the industry, but also into that direction of photography, because like you said, you're doing something over here that wasn't necessarily being done, setting the trend, as we say, and really diving into something kind of new and exciting, especially for the UK, which is incredible. So brand photography, let's dive into this topic, because I feel like this is something that even a lot of my clients come to me and ask me, should I get branding photography? What should I do? And just with my own experiences, I used to be a photographer myself, but having branding photography was the best £3,000 I ever invested in before I'd even launched my business. I didn't even have a website. I didn't have an offer. I had nothing, but I knew that I wanted to have some incredible photos done to be able to represent me in a professional way, but also my character and my personality. And I feel that this is a question that a lot of people do ask, not necessarily when to get it done. Do you get it done at the very beginning of your journey? But what's your take on this around female entrepreneurs having branding photography? What's the power of it, or how can they kind of utilize it to support them with promoting their business, but also promoting themselves?
So I think first off is if you have a professional shoot, you are going to come across more professionally online than if you've just got a load of selfies. Now, there is absolutely a time and place for selfies and for DIY photos. But if you are building your website, you are launching a podcast, or you're going to write a book, or you've got these big goals and you want to be on stages, or you just want to look like you know your stuff, then having those professional images tells your audience, I take myself seriously. I take my business seriously, and I'm going to show up in that professional manner. Whereas if you're expecting clients to invest in you and you haven't even invested in your own business to get some decent images, it doesn't set the right tone. Now, there are absolutely businesses out there who are thriving and they are doing really well and they've never had a shoot in their life. But I bet they've been doing it a long time and that they have built that reputation like I did, I suppose, really, before Instagram was really being used for business. Like 10, 11 years ago, social media wasn't really where you were getting your business. So it didn't matter so much. Whereas now, brand photography helps you stay, like, it helps you stand out, and it helps you look more professional, more legitimate as a business, because, well, anybody can take a selfie and throw together a pretty pants looking website. But if you've got that more polished look, then people are going to trust you more. And also, I just think, like, whilst it might be nervy being in front of the camera, a professional photographer is going to be able to bring you out much more than your partner is.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely agree. It's so much easier to do it in front of not necessarily a stranger, but someone who doesn't know you as much, because they don't put you off and they can direct you and tell you how to pose. And, and I know that's your zone of genius and expertise, but I completely agree with you on that. Absolutely. And I sort of think about anything that I've invested in, whether it's a hair and beauty product, whether it's investing in a coach, whether it's investing in something for my business, I always look at the brand and I look at the representation of that person or that brand. And obviously the photos, the photography and the videography can do so much for a brand, and also tell a brand story. But is there any sort of mistakes, any common mistakes that you see a lot of people make when it comes to personal branding and photography, or anything that people should avoid?
I think the biggest one that I see is trying to be something that you're not. So looking at something, you might, by all means, like, get inspiration, look on Pinterest. I love a Pinterest scroll, but don't try and be somebody that you're not. So if you are someone who loves nature and your business is built around being outside and all of those really tonal colors, don't then go to your brand shoot wearing a pencil skirt, suit, pair of high heels, and stand in the middle of the city, because it'll absolutely, like, for one, people will be really confused then when they get you on a Zoom and they see you in, something much more casual, in a really homely environment. But you won't feel right. And if somebody doesn't feel like themselves, or they don't feel comfortable in front of the camera, they hold all of this tension in their jaw. And what you get then is you get this, like, smile that's, like, just around the mouth and no sparkle in the eye. And it doesn't then connect with the audience. And the people looking at those photos won't necessarily know why they're not clicking with that image, but they'll know something's off. And so they'll scroll on by because they're like, oh, something feels hinky about that. So, and if you're not being who you are and showing up as you, then when they meet you in person or they meet you on a Zoom, and there's a disconnect, your
Mm.
brain goes, well, if they're disingenuous about that, what else are they disingenuous about? So can I really trust this person? So trying to be somebody that you're not, be it in your brand, in your imagery, in your copy, in anything really in life, is probably the biggest mistake. Like, really celebrate who you are, because that's what people are going to buy into. So when you're looking at doing a shoot, please don't try and be something that you're not. Don't wear clothes that you would never wear in a million years. Like, by all means, use me as an excuse to go shopping, but buy things that you love, not things that you're going to feel really uncomfortable with, because that's just not who you are. So that's probably, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. And it's probably the thing that people who are newer in business do more than people who are more established, because they're not really sure where they, they've maybe not done the work on what their values and their message are. So, unless you're really clear on who you are and what your brand is about, you're almost better off waiting to have a shoot, because otherwise you'll either end up with photos that don't represent you, or they're just a bit vanilla.
Yeah.
And you don't
I
want
think
to do that.
exactly that. We don't want vanilla. We don't want vanilla. But I love what you're saying there in terms of people being authentic to themselves and representing themselves as exactly who they are as an individual. I feel like there's an awful lot of opportunities to be influenced online, obviously,
Yeah.
and as well as, through photography, through copy, through everything, content, all of the things. How do we, how do our listeners for the podcast, how do we as female entrepreneurs make sure that we truly, through our photography, or the branding, we truly stay authentic to ourselves? Is there anything specifically that you would suggest or recommend to people on that front? Because I do think it's quite easy to get influenced by, oh, so and so is doing really well in my industry, and so I should be dressing like her and acting like her and all these things. How can we make sure that people are staying true and authentic to themselves?
So I think the conversation I have with my clients is, we go through this really in-depth brand questionnaire about their messaging and their values, why they set up their business, the story behind their brand. But I'm also asking them things like, what is it that you love doing? Because if somebody says to me, I really love spending time with my friends and going out for cocktails and shopping, that's very much going to drive where we might do the shoot.
Yeah.
Versus them saying, I love nothing more than curling up and reading a book with my dog. Then I'm like, okay, so probably then the location that we're doing is very different for that. Even if we're looking at shoot houses, the kind of vibe that you're creating with those houses and the decor within those houses is driven by what those people like doing, as in their business and in their kind of personal life. So if you're working with a photographer, work with someone who's really going to draw that out of you, because they'll help you stay true to what you're doing then, and they'll stop you from getting distracted by all of the shiny things that are going on, or the things that you think that you should be doing, because they're going to be able to look at it really objectively. And I've had it with, I had a conversation this morning with a client, and she is, we're sorting through the timings and things for an event that she's launching. But she was like, what do I wear? And we were talking about the kind of clothes that she should wear to her event. And I was like, she mentioned something. I was like, but that's not who you are, and that's not who the brand is. So you don't want these photos to have you dressed a certain way when it's actually nothing. Just because everybody else does this, it doesn't mean that you have to, and you need to stand out as you. So, as photographers, we can look at it much more objectively and sort of steer you back onto the path of who you are when it is really noisy out there. And probably, like, if you are doing it yourself, talk to people that you trust. Ask them who do you see me as? What would you expect in a shoot? But pick people who know you well and will be honest and won't just tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. Amazing. So talked a little bit about authenticity and really being able to show up as the real them through their branding, through their photography. And another thing that I find really, really interesting when it comes to brands is, the power of storytelling. I'm very passionate about storytelling, and I think that this comes in all aspects of, especially a personal brand, being able to share your story. How can you bring in storytelling through brand photography? Is there a way that female entrepreneurs can kind of bring this through their photography to share with their audience?
Yeah, and there's lots of little ways that you can do it, from the props that you bring in
Mm.
to the locations, like to the styling, that sort of thing that helps tell those stories. Part of your stories, I've got a shoot this week with a lady who every year she goes on a holiday, long weekend with her best friend to Paris. So we're going to weave some of that into her shoot just by having some croissants next to her as she's reading through a book. She loves James Bond, so she's going to be reading a book on James Bond. There's going to be croissants there. Her blouse has got little martini glasses on it. So we're really subtly bringing in those elements of her story. But that might resonate with someone, because actually someone might notice the book that she's reading and go, oh my God, I love James Bond too. And that might be the difference between her and somebody else that they're looking to work with, and goes, well, we've got the same passion. So maybe I'm going to reach out to her too, and I'm going to start that conversation. But another really big storytelling thread that you can put through your images is actually how you work with your clients.
Mm.
So if you are someone that, I don't know, take a cake designer, for instance, you can get photos of you designing the cake and doing the sketches, putting together the tasting box, actually making those really intricate flowers, which I can never believe are actually made out of sugar icing. It's insane.
Yes.
Putting all that cake together, you know, that's all taking the audience on a journey with you and telling the story of how you work with your clients. So it's not just about photos of you engaging with the camera and looking that audience in the eye. It's about getting images of you doing things and showing action, which helps tell the story of kind of who you are and what you do, or bringing people in. Like if a big part of your story is family, consider bringing your family in. Now they don't have to be on camera, like as in facing the camera. Like I've got, my little boy Jack is he's part of my why, as is my husband. But I don't want Jack's face plastered all over the internet. So the photos that I show, it's the back of his head, because it's showing that part of my story is my IVF journey. It's part of being a mum and juggling the business, both of us working in the business. And so I want that in my imagery, but on my terms. I don't want his face everywhere. So you can bring these things in without it being so in your face.
I love that. So identifying sort of key things, key parts that represent them, that represent part of their story, their journey, and bringing that in. And I think as well, just on reflection of what you said there, it's a really interesting one in terms of children. So many of us who are mums and mumpreneurs, we often find that, our why is our children. And I've had this question an awful lot actually from clients. How do they represent that they're a mumpreneur without physically bringing their child into the photos? And for all of my listeners will know that Sophia features into all my photos because it's something that I decided to do, but I fully appreciate a lot of mums don't. So is there ways that they can be creative with that in terms of representing them as a mumpreneur without saying, here's my child all over the internet? What could they do with that aspect?
And I've done this really recently. And it's little things like, if you're having photos taken in the kitchen, kids' drawings on the fridge, or you're working on your laptop and there's toys around. We might do an image kind of from above where it's just your hands typing, but in shot there's a kid's book or there's some toys, and it's just using props. The same way you can do the same with pets, like having a lead hung up at the door that you happen to be stood near, or some B-roll imagery of you tidying away pet toys or things like that. So you can do it with props without having to bring anybody else in.
Amazing. So if some of our listeners are thinking, right, okay, this sounds incredible, I definitely need to get myself some branding photography, obviously they can reach out to you and we're going to share your fabulous details and all the things later on. But what should female entrepreneurs look for when it comes to hiring a branding photographer? Because I know there's a lot out there, and I'd love your advice around that and what to particularly look out for people, especially in their local areas, for example.
So I think the first thing is to look at what their editing style is like. So my editing and the photos that you'll see of mine are very light and bright. Colors are true to life. if your brand is very edgy, urban, bit dark and moody, I'm absolutely not the photographer for you, because my photos are going to look ridiculous on your grid against all of that really cool, dark, edgy stuff that I'm not that person. I am not cool enough to be that. So you want to look for someone who's editing their photos, again, in a very dark and moody and edgy way. So that's probably the easiest way to kind of sift through photographers is, do you like the way that they edit their photos? Can you see that style of photo in your brand? Does it represent you? And if you've got someone who photographs everything in a really high fashion kind of Vogue-esque way, that's probably not going to work for a really earthy brand.
Yeah.
So you can have a look at people's portfolio to see whether, and just put brand photographer into Instagram and you'll end up with thousands of us. So have a look through which photos you actually like. And then I would, and if you're still really struggling, talk to your business friends and say, who did you use? Go for recommendations, because they'll tell you if they enjoyed their shoot or not. Even if they were nervous, they'll still tell you whether or not they got a good result off the end of it. So asking for recommendations is another good way. And then talk to the photographer, because if you have a Zoom with them and they make you feel comfortable, they put you at ease, they understand your brand values and they get your vision for your business, then they're going to get good photos out of it. If when you're talking to them you think, oh God, she's so annoying, she doesn't stop talking, you are not going to enjoy that shoot. And you're going to hold all of that tension in your jaw again. You're not going to, those photos are not going to connect and you're not going to enjoy it. And so I would talk to your peers, talk to the photographer and get an idea as to whether or not you actually do want to be vulnerable with this photographer. Because I ask my clients, what are you uncomfortable about? Because I need to know if my clients are lacking in confidence in any area. So if somebody says to me, I really don't like my arms, then I'm going to make sure I'm posing them in a way that is the most flattering I can possibly get it for their arms. If you don't feel comfortable telling me that, then I'm going to take photos of you, because I think you look amazing anyway, but you're going to instantly look at your arms in every single photo. But if you felt comfortable telling me that, then I've got your back. That I'm not going to put you in a way that's going to make your arms look bigger in your eyes. So definitely talk to the photographers to try and then really narrow it down. And I know the thing on price always comes up as well. People are looking, I see it in groups. I'm looking for a photographer that doesn't break the bank, or I'm looking for a photographer on a budget. And that is like, how long is a piece of string? Like, it's just and I would be more inclined to see if a more expensive photographer does mini shoots and have less time with them than to have a long shoot with somebody who you're like, oh, they're okay, but they're in budget.
Yeah.
Because this isn't like wedding or family photography. A brand shoot is an investment in your business, and those photos have to work hard. Like, they have to show, they're selling you. And so if you don't love the photos, you're not going to post them as much, and you're not going to get that return on investment. Now, I can't say if you spend X amount on a shoot, then you'll make X amount back, because I've got no control over what your product or your service is like. But if you spend X amount on a photo shoot with somebody that you're not really comfortable with, but because they were in budget and they happen to be available, you're not going to put those photos out, and you're definitely not going to make that money back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so important, isn't it, to do the research, to have the conversations, to find out their editing style, their shooting style, just so many things there to consider. And I definitely think this will support and help people, especially if they're considering that. And I definitely agree there as well. There are, when it comes to budget, when it comes to things, the other thing that I would, add to what you've just mentioned is, remember that yes, it's for your business, and it can come out of your business funds. So it's, you know, no one has to pay for this out of their own pocket. This is for your business because it's for your business. And what a great investment to, you know, to make. I will always highly recommend to everyone to get some branding photography, because it honestly helps so much with content creation, with your website, with your graphics, with everything. Honestly, it's one of the best things ever that I've ever invested in, and I continue to have branding shoots every 2 months approximately, so it's always really, really good to have. So say, for example,
but even but I think actually just on that, sorry, even your confidence, like the number of clients that I work, in fact, if I got paid every time somebody just said they felt awful in front of a camera, I don't think I'd ever have to lift my camera up again. Like, the majority of people that I work with and maybe that I attract are people that who think they don't take a good photo, who think that they're not photogenic. And then they get their images, or they see the back of the camera and they go, oh my God, that's not me. I'm like, it's absolutely you. That is how I see you. And that is how I'm photographing. And so you see that confidence build, because maybe the only photos they've had are nights out in terrible lighting by someone who doesn't know how to use a camera. Like, you know, I look at the photos from nights out at uni or with my girls, and I just think, oh God, if that was my only frame of reference as to what I look like, I'd never leave the house. So a shoot can be a real celebration, confidence boost as to who you are and how far you've come in business, whether it's day 1 or year 10. The fact that you are launching a business, you're already miles ahead of anybody else who is thinking that they just don't like their job. So it's a confidence boost and a celebration as much as it is actually a business asset.
I love this. Really boosts the confidence. And it does. I think it definitely gives you that confidence. And you, as the photographer, will know that, again, you can capture people's images, beautiful images from different angles, using different lights, you know, whether it's natural lighting or artificial, all the things. You can create so many incredible images to give people and provide people that, like you said, they wouldn't necessarily have ever seen themselves in that way before. And it's an interesting one, isn't it, as well? Because I think we as individuals, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we see something often which is quite different to how other people see us as well. So I think it's always great to get a photographer to, I say interpret, but create incredible images that potentially people haven't seen you in that light before as well, which is, you know, great. Absolutely. If we were looking at a photo shoot and people have got back their photos, and you know, they're not potentially in a position like you or I that would be able to have lots of different photo shoots continuously. Say they've got a bulk of, I don't know, 50 photos, just as a ballpark figure. What could they then do in terms of repurposing those for marketing, for social media, etc.? Is there any advice that you could give around that for those 50 photos, or maybe even less, depending on how many they've been?
Yeah. Well, so take, for instance, so my 30-minute mini shoots, you probably get 25 plus photos, and you'll have one outfit change within that too. So we've already got 2 outfits. And a brand photographer should be taking your photos in a mixture of portrait and landscape so that you can use them across different platforms. If you're only getting a gallery of one orientation, then they shouldn't be, it sounds harsh, they shouldn't be calling themselves a brand photographer, because they need to be coming into it with your marketing in mind.
Yes.
When you've got that gallery, the first thing I would do is, this is ex-crisis manager in me, back them up. Please back them up. And then what I do when I get my shots through is I put them into folders based on what I'm doing. So I've got a folder of photos of me holding my camera at my laptop, kind of lifestyle-y ones with family, and ones of me looking to camera or looking off camera. I do that so that it's then really quick and easy for, if I'm creating a post, to find a photo rather than scroll through 50 images. I don't even want to have to scroll through 50. I just want to go to the right folder and scroll through 5. And then, God, you use them everywhere. So you want to be updating your profile pictures. You want to be putting them into Canva and updating your header for your Facebook pages, for your emails, your email signature. Go on, if you've got a nice kind of landscape banner image, go and update it on your website. And then look at the content that you are wanting to write in terms of static posts, and start thinking about which of those images can go as the kind of illustration for that post. So the easiest way to get the most out of your shoot is to do this thinking before the shoot. So I ask my clients, what blog posts are you writing in the next 6 months? And because I know then, okay, I'm working with a sleep expert and they're going to do something about morning routine. Okay, let's get some photos of them doing a morning routine. Now that might then yield a couple of video clips and 6 or 7 different photos. So she can use them in a blog post. She can take experts of that and use each of those 6 images to get 6 Instagram posts. She can put an email together using 1 image from the blog post. And so one little thread of content can then be used and repurposed with 4 or 5 images across multiple platforms. So these aren't just headshots for your bio. These are, this is all of your content. And so the more you can think about the words that you're writing, right, what image can I put on top of that? Because we're generally visual takers in of information, for want of a better phrase. And so people will stop scrolling because of the image, not because of the great big long paragraph that you've written. Sometimes even just take a photo of you, cut yourself out of it using the handy Canva tool and put yourself onto a graphic. Again, it's a different way of using your photos. And another reason for putting them into folders is then when you get a PR request or you get a blog or you're going onto a podcast or something, then you can easily go into that folder and get the headshot for them. Or I've got one client who just sends the link to her gallery to the journalist and says, yeah, I've got 20 photos here. Pick the one that works best for your article or your publication. And it makes their life so much easier.
Amazing. Great ways of being able to repurpose. And like you said, there's just so many different ways that you can do it. And, coming to a photographer, first of all, with, your future plans is always a great, great start. But otherwise, once you've got those photos, just think about how you can strategically use them again and again and again in different formats and different channels and different platforms. So I really appreciate that. Amanda, we're coming towards the end of the episode. Is there any final advice that you would give our female entrepreneur listeners today in regards to branding photography?
I think it is to embrace your faith. It is so easy to hide behind our client wins or some stock images or, products if you make them. But people really do buy from people and they want to get to know you, particularly if they're engaging with an online service provider or an independent business. If they wanted faceless shopping, they'd go to Amazon or they'd go to one of the big corporations. The fact that they're wanting to work with you and maybe not an agency is because they want to work with someone who's going to get them, but they can't do that if they don't know who you are. So even if you are not in the field right now to be having a shoot, start talking on stories, start showing up to your audience, and just let them get to know you, because they really, really do want to get to know you if they want to work with you. And that's a nice, easy way to ease into being visible, because it disappears after 24 hours.
Yeah, definitely. Stories.
Yeah.
Amazing. No, thank you so much for that. And I think it's so important, isn't it, to, like you said, to, again, going back to what you said at the beginning, being authentic, being the real you, and being able to, step into the shoes of the person that you are, but also who you want to become, and really utilizing your branding photography to be able to share your story and to obviously to represent your brand, whether it's a personal brand or an actual brand. So no, I really appreciate that advice that you've given everyone. I've got one final question for you.
Yeah.
And this is a question I ask every single guest that comes onto my podcast. What is your one word of the year and why, if you have one?
My word for this year was balance.
Nice.
And to try and it's not been 100% balanced all year. I've had some very crazy months where I've done a lot of work, but they've been intentionally done that way. So I wanted more balance so that I could have more family time. Jack's at an age where he's really fun. And so I want to spend more time with him. So my work day is generally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I might do the odd call on a Monday or a Friday if it's the only way that I can do, my clients are available or for interviews. But generally, I'm working 3 days a week. I'm not working weekends. I got rid of weddings because I wanted that balance, because I am definitely prone to being a workaholic. So
amazing. I love it. Balance, absolutely. And where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
probably Instagram is the best place to find me, at AKP Branding Stories. I'd love to say that I'll take you behind the scenes on all my shoots, but if I'm honest, what usually happens is I do a story saying, I'm on the way to a shoot, I'm really excited for you, I'll show you what I'm doing, and then I don't, because I forget, I get caught up in my shoot, and I come back on at the end of the day and go, yeah, it was a really great shoot, but sorry, I haven't filmed anything, I haven't shown you anything. But people, my DMs are always open for anyone that's just wanting to ask about being visible, just want some advice, that sort of thing.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being our guest on today's episode, Amanda. And please do go and give Amanda a follow. She's absolutely incredible at what she does. And I would highly recommend contacting her and having a conversation with her if you're interested in branding photography. Thank you so much, my lovely. And thank you to everyone that's tuned in for today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And I will see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kaylee Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow and scale your dream 6-figure or multi-6-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.